AMC Theaters at downtown Disney Springs. We're here tonight. Going to AMC because there is a preview for a little series that debuted yesterday on a, probably, maybe not have heard of it yet, streaming service that Disney is providing called Disney Plus. It's very underground right now, but you guys may hear about it in the future. But there's a TV show that, again, maybe not that many people know about, called The Mandalorian. They're doing a premiere here tonight of the first 3 episodes. The first one premiered on Disney Plus yesterday streaming. The next 2 we get to see tonight, and a Q&A with the people behind The Mandalorian. We've made it in, and that's the line. Buckets are on. We've got an hour to go here. So we've got 20 minutes to go before The Mandalorian starts. We are going to see 3 episodes. We are not allowed to talk about spoilers, details of the 3 episodes, except for the first one, because everyone has seen that already. You probably have seen it already, as long as you're not in any country outside of the US that is not going to see this until like March at this point, which is a crime. But we'll talk a little bit about it. Just a little bit. The screening is done, the Q&A is done, everything is done, it's all empty here. I'm going to have to decompress a little bit, and we'll get into a review and my thoughts on Disney Plus and The Mandalorian and all that good stuff tomorrow. Alright, so it is actually the next day or next night after we went to the premiere for The Mandalorian at AMC Disney Springs. The event that we went to was actually a Disney fan event, or Lucasfilm fan event, that we were invited to. Before you guys jump into the, was it a hosted or sponsored or anything like that type of event, it was not. There was an actual premiere that was taking place in Hollywood at the El Capitan yesterday. And following the showing of the first 3 episodes, they had Jon Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy introduced everything, but Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and the cast of The Mandalorian, as well as some of the directors from the different episodes on stage to do a little bit of a background and Q&A, etc. We got to see that simulcast where we were, but how the event ended up coming about and us getting invited to it ties back to me being part of this group in Florida, and I've talked about them before, the Star Wars Grand Florida Alliance. We've been around for years. It's basically a fan group. We have a table at Celebration every time that there's a celebration. But basically who was in the theater with us, it was the Mando Mercs, local Mando Mercs, some of the 501st, and basically like our groups. It was a very tight-knit little audience, and it was hosted by Lucasfilm and Disney. They had like 8 security guards around to make sure that people weren't taking their phones out or recording anything. And they asked us our opinions after the episodes played. I'm not going to get into spoilers about 2 and 3 too much, but I will tell you that if you have not seen the first episode of The Mandalorian, you may want to stop now, because there are definitely going to be some spoiler pieces here, because there's not a real way to talk about The Mandalorian without getting into spoilers. Overall, if you guys are interested, I know it really sucks for everybody that's outside of the States that are not going to get Disney Plus for a couple of months. I think it's starting like in March, so it's kind of weird, especially with some of the stuff that's playing out in the show and maybe the impact onto The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker rather. It's really weird that things are not releasing sooner for you guys, and maybe they'll work out a way for you to be able to see the show prior to the Rise of Skywalker taking place. And I really debated about putting together any type of video to even talk about The Mandalorian, because I think every time we do Star Wars stuff, we tend to get a lot of the boo birds out and people that instantly either thumbs down or, Star Wars sucks since Disney bought it, etc. But I truly believe The Mandalorian was phenomenal. Even as differentiating between the movies that have been out, both the saga movies and also Rogue One or Solo, the TV show has really reignited this love for Star Wars for me so far. But they did ask the first question at the panel, or the people that were in the theater yesterday, that said, let us know what your feedback is. And when people were yelling things out, the number one first thing that got yelled out by multiple people was, it was better than The Last Jedi, which, it's kind of unfair or difficult, I think, to compare a 30 some odd minute TV show to a movie, but it is what it is. For those of you guys that have not seen The Mandalorian, I'm going to talk about Mandalorian a little bit in detail here and give you some of my thoughts, and like I said, not really get into a lot of what episodes 2 and 3 holds, because it's coming. You guys are going to see, by the time that this gets uploaded, episode 2 of The Mandalorian should be available on Disney Plus, and in episode 3, I think it's either next week or the following week. So I do really like the way that Disney Plus is handling the release of The Mandalorian. We could talk about that first, in that it's not everything being released all at one time so that you're binging things. I hate binge watching anything. I know there's a lot of people out there that really enjoy it, but I think that there's so many details and things that get missed when you binge watch things, that releasing an episode a week kind of gives you time to really marinate and soak in all of the details on things. And I thought it was fantastic. I'm up to, I think, the 5th watching of episode 1 of The Mandalorian at this point, and really just kind of picking out all of the Easter eggs. And there are tons of Easter eggs and things to talk about here. First things first, the first scene where we have kind of like a very Western cowboy-esque type opening. I really dig both the soundtrack, which kind of, gives you that mental imagery of what you'd expect from like a Clint Eastwood type moment, etc. And then having that parallel over to the Mandalorian. The score is really well done. The first mark that the Mandalorian is seeking after is Horatio Sands, who is hilarious from Saturday Night Live days. One of my favorite skits of all time, the Debbie Downer when they're at Disney World, and he can't hold in his laughter. Horatio Sands, it's hard to tell who it is in the character until you really take a deep look. The character's name, I think, is Mithral. That's his bounty. And basically, you already have the start of the show and the premise of, we have a kick-ass bounty hunter here. We have a mark that needs to be acquired, people standing in the way, and you really get to see initially how tough the Mandalorian is. You have a character that's trying to escape, and the doors are triggering the doors to close and severing off the legs. To me, it was just so much of like a throwback to things that we saw in the first Star Wars Cantina scene, where the violence or kind of like mild gore or type of shock setting in. It was awesome to me. Seeing the cab speeder type thing pull up, both with the creature, and I'm not sure what the creature's name is, with the long nose that kind of calls for things with the recorder, and then having the droid pull up and having the Mandalorian say like nothing with, no droids, is really pretty cool, especially when you kind of look at later in the show and you see flashback scenes to the reason why he became who he became, and kind of like this purge type situation that may have happened with the family and droids, super battle droids kind of shooting and leaving him alone. You could see why he's so adamant to not want to do anything or have anything to do with a droid in that particular scene. But who pulls up is Brian Posehn, or Posehn. I'm sure I'm getting his name wrong, but hilarious. I love Brian Posehn's comedy. He's had a great kind of mock metal song, Metal by Numbers, years back with Scott Ian from Anthrax, and he is a Star Wars super fan. So the moment that he pulls up, he's instantly recognizable, and just absolutely hilarious to think that we're opening a scene of this cowboy-esque action-based Star Wars with Horatio Sands as the Mark who's being brought in, and Brian Posehn as the driver of the speeder was awesome. And of course, they reference him looking for creatures off in the distance, and I think the creature's name was a Ravenak, and I'm looking down on notes just to make sure I'm saying these things right, but I'm not positive that that's the creature's name, but it was really kick-ass creature that comes out and trying to attack the ship, kind of like a hybrid of like a dragon snake with a walrus type face. I love creatures, and it's something, you know, even as a fan of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, the one thing that's really missing are alien types or alien variety or aliens at all, and creatures. This is what makes up Star Wars. You don't look at anything in any type of light and differentiate like something shouldn't exist. Everybody's on a parallel plane when you're looking at things, and it's just matter of fact. And here's this really amazing creature that's out to attack the ship, and you know, you have the Mandalorian needing to make do with what he can to try to get this creature out of there, and he brings out that ridiculous weapon that was made famous, at least for me. I'm not sure if everybody calls back to the Star Wars Holiday Special, but there is a lot of that goodness here. And the weapon, I believe it's called the Ambin Phase Pulse Blaster. It kind of looks like the like fork type things from Nathan's French fries. And that's what I always thought about when I saw the weapon from the Holiday Special. And the weapon is amazing. It's you know, you always think about, you know, at least when you try to pair up like what character archetypes could be more powerful than others, and, you know, Jedi at the top of the list, and, you know, how can bounty hunters compete? I mean, and you have this gun that it either can disintegrate things or has this electronic or electric charge to be able to freeze people or electrocute them at short range. Just awesome. Really awesome action to start off things. And then when you have the mark inside of Mandalorian ship, and they reference for one of the first times, I think, one of two firsts that jump out for me in the show, that the Mark Mithril needs to use the facilities. And it's the first time we see kind of like at least that, from what I believe, unless I'm wrong, I'm sure guys will probably comment below if I'm wrong on any of these stuff, but we see a bathroom, a toilet on the ship. And it's one of those things that you always thought about as like a kid, kind of poking fun, like, do these guys, like even the stormtroopers or anything else, like need to eat or go to the bathroom and everything? We saw, you know, at least the clone troopers eating in Kamino, and we'll come back to Kamino later. But you know, we get to see the bad guy looking, or make an excuse that he's got to go to the bathroom. But then, you know, he also references, as he's saying that he needs to use the facilities, kind of like to me, what I took it as like an inside baseball type of comment about, like, you know, is it true that you guys never take your helmets off? And I know, you know, I've never been in the 501st or the Mercs or these costuming groups, but I know like that's kind of one of the inside rules is never take your helmet off. Never let them see you without your helmet off type thing. And I know when we saw it with the bigger group yesterday with all the Mercs, when that line was said, everybody kind of laughed at it, you know, got a giggle out of it. So when Horatio Sands' character Mithril does go down to use the facilities, he figures out the code or hacks like the system to be able to open up this arsenal box. All kinds of guns in there, and you know, it's tough to see what guns are in there unless you're freezing things, but you see like a DL-44, which is like the Han Solo type pistol, or I think Cassian uses a similar type of pistol in Rogue One. There's a DH-17 pistol in there too, which is kind of like the standard like Rebel type blaster. There's a rifle that looks like it's from like Rogue One era, and then there's a gun that kind of sort of looks like a Genosian blaster, but I'm not sure if that's what it is for sure or not there. But it's cool to be able to pause the scene really quick and see all of these different weapons that the Mandalorian is carrying aboard his ship. And it's within this sequence that we actually get a reference to Life Day. So we're making Life Day canon again, and Life Day from the Star Wars Holiday Special as well. Wookiee Life Day. If you guys have never checked out the Star Wars Holiday Special, I'm sure you could find it on YouTube, and I've said this every year when this comes up. It is well worth checking out. It is the most hokey Star Wars goodness that you'll ever see. It is much loved by myself and Mary and Jess, and we have had in the past gatherings of friends that get together to be able to watch it. But you know, we're bringing Life Day back, and then we're also bringing back maybe not one of my favorite things is the carbon freezing on the ship, If you remember back in Empire Strikes Back, but when Boba Fett expresses concern that Vader is looking to freeze Han Solo, we've only gone a few years from that time period to now where carbon freezing apparently is so accepted that we have modules built on ships to do so. The Cantina sequence is back, where the Mandalorian is bringing his marks back, or bounties back, and picking up new bounties is probably one of the greatest scenes. There's so much good stuff to look for in there. Constable Zuvio, the much maligned character from the new trilogy that was cut and his toy just sat on pegs forever, is out and about in the Cantina, as well as, unfortunately, he's well represented at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge with seemingly everybody, cast members, wearing that particular costume. But we get a look at a bunch of different creatures, which are fantastic to be able to see all these different creatures and different people wandering around. I think we'll only see like one other humanoid besides Carl Weathers' character milling around at the Cantina. You get to see Chasito milling around in the Cantina as well, and he's part of Enfys Nest Cloud Riders from the Solo movie. And you can see some aliens playing Sabacc, the card game. Just a lot of stuff to look for, and a lot of reasons to be able to rewatch and check out what Easter eggs are in there. Then the Mandalorian interacts with Carl Weathers' character, Greef Karga. He's really kind of a shifty bounty hunter guild leader. He offers some lower paying bounty pucks, and then gives a card for like an off the grid type of bounty, which ultimately leads the Mandalorian to meet up with Walter Herzog's character, otherwise known as the Client. And we also meet Omid Abtahi, I may be butchering these names, who is playing the character of Dr. Pershing. And they have a bounty that does not have a full amount of information. There's no puck, there's no chain code full, and we know that the bounty is 50 years of age, but it would take a skilled bounty hunter like the Mandalorian in order to be able to track that bounty down. Both of these characters, from the moment that they're introduced, you can see that they're Imperial sympathizers. Obviously the Empire has fallen at this point, but we have stormtroopers that are guarding them. The stormtrooper outfits are all dirty. It's really cool to see that there's no upkeep for them, but they are guarding the Client, and the Client is wearing a medallion symbol for the Empire as well. And then if you take a closer look at Dr. Pershing's clothing, you can see, maybe we'll be able to include like a screenshot here, but on the shoulder you see the symbol for the Camino Cloning Institute or area, which may foreshadow some things that we find later in the plot, and then maybe in the next couple of episodes coming up as well. The down payment that the Mandalorian gets is in Beskar steel, which is what is used for the Mandalorian armor, and eventually is melted down. This is one of the other complaints that I have, is a little wonky storyline that this little rectangle of Beskar is able to forge into a pauldron for the Mandalorian. But nonetheless, as the Mandalorian meets with the armorer to make the pauldron, every strike that we have from the pauldron being created, we have flashbacks for the Mandalorian's life, which calls back to foundlings instead of younglings for the Mandalore people, where they apparently are invaded or attacked and taken over, and they reference the Great Purge, with what I believe are super battle droids coming to kill the Mandalorian's family. So there is a little bit of foreshadowing there about younglings and struggle when you're a kid and not having parents around in that scene, which way pay off a little bit further down the line in the episode. Eventually, the Mandalorian makes it his way over to the planet where he needs to go pick up his next bounty. He runs into an Ugnaught, Kyle. I'm not sure if the name is correct if I'm saying it, but it is Nick Nolte. And you can see Nick Nolte's face, really trippy character. And he saves Nick Nolte's character, this Ugnaught Kyle, or the further away from my name that his name could be, is the better off I am. But basically saves the Mandalorian from being attacked by these blurgs. Blurgs we've seen before in the Ewoks Battle for Endor, and we've had them in Clone Wars before in the past as well. We have a really strange camaraderie scene between the two of them, and teaching the Mandalorian to ride this blurg, because apparently the only way to get to the mark is to ride this blurg across the wasteland or the valley, which ironically, not that I'm getting too spoilerish into next episode, but we didn't need a blurg to get back to the Ugnaught eventually. But anyhow, that's a story for another day, and we'll get to that when we talk about those episodes in the future. But as the Mandalorian is about to pick out his bounty or get to the bounty, he discovers that IG-11, an assassin bounty droid, is also on the case and has been given the same job to be able to pick up that bounty. IG-11, played by Taika Waititi, is both charismatic with humor and also a kick-ass droid. The scene that leads up here is probably, to me, the best action sequence since the original trilogy. And the animation for IG-11 being able to twirl or spin around and attack is just phenomenal. I could watch that scene over and over and over again. They eventually find the bounty, and if you haven't seen episode 1 before, perhaps the biggest spoiler event is coming right now. When I say the bounty reveals itself to be in kind of a baby bassinet type of device that's floating. The blanket pulls down, and we find what essentially is like a baby Yoda. And it made me immediately go to look online in the resources to figure out what creature is Yoda, what species is Yoda. And the only thing that pops up is that Yoda is a humanoid, and the only other Yoda that was known was Yaddle, which was another female Jedi on the Council in the prequel trilogy. But the Mark is 50 years old. Unfortunately, IG-88 is programmed or has a directive to assassinate the target, and the Mandalorian makes a quick decision to kill IG-88 or end his robotic existence in order to save this baby. And the first indication that you see from this baby is that it's in this bassinet, and the bassinet's floating, and you're really kind of unsure whether the bassinet's floating because it's Star Wars and things float like a land speeder, or if it's floating because maybe the baby Yoda is also Force sensitive or some type of Jedi. This is where things get crazy, and I think everyone sits at the end and says, like, whoa, like, what is that? And you have to assume, like, is that, it can't be Yoda, but is it like son of Yoda or daughter of Yoda, or what's happening? But if we go back to Dr. Pershing, which, by the way, is first in Star Wars, Dr. Pershing is wearing eyeglasses. The symbol that's on his side, and this is my speculation or feedback or thoughts at this point, where he has the Camino cloning patch on his jacket, I can only assume, with the age of this Yoda creature that's in the bassinet, is around the same age as what Anakin would be at this time in the story as well. And we always had questions about Anakin's birth, like, all of a sudden he was just born, according to Shmi, and it was like the Immaculate Birth type thing, and we know that we have a history of clones and clone troopers being created in Camino. How do we know that this Yoda is not a clone of Yoda? Or Yaddle, but most likely Yoda. And that's why the Mark is wanted so badly by these Imperial sympathizers. Which begs the question of, we know that this new trilogy had, or at least at this time period, we know Luke is alive. Leia's alive. Supposedly the Emperor is dead. How do they not know or feel something so force sensitive existing somewhere else? Or who created this clone? And are there other clones? Which kind of throws off the storyline for the new trilogy, or the last movie, The Last Jedi, kind of alluding to either what it would be, with Luke or Kylo Ren or Rey or Leia, and then leading into this new movie where we're teased about the Emperor existing again. Is the Emperor a clone? All of this time that we've seen these other storyline bits with Rey, where she's looking for her family and she goes into the the cave underwater and searches for her parents and sees the reflection of herself. Is she created of herself, and that's why she saw herself in the mirror, that she's a clone? How much are clones gonna play into the new movie that's coming out? Filoni is very big on clones, which, by the way, I was expecting like other characters from Filoni's Clone Wars and Rebels to show up here, and they certainly can, because we know that Rebels ship the Ghost appears in the new movie that's coming out, based off of what's in the trailers. But there's so many questions, and what I could tell you is a lot of those questions are not answered in 2 or 3 of the season for The Mandalorian, but you're going to have more questions that come up. But I can't get into those at the moment until those episodes air. It wouldn't be fair, and the representatives from Lucasfilm really urged us not to ruin things for everyone. But this is where we're at. We have a Yoda clone, which was the second biggest piece of feedback that came up in the end of the episodes, was that people want to buy baby Yoda dolls at this point. So Disney and Lucas have done it again. But the episode, to me, it makes me want to watch it over and over and over again, between the Easter eggs, the action sequences, and then the ending. It's a gripper. So, I don't know. That's what my thoughts are. If you guys want to discuss below, I am going to label this video spoiler discussion up top, so leave your comments and spoilers below. Please do not do so on social media to me, whether it's on the Facebook post or Twitter post for the video, and only do so in the comments below. We don't want to ruin it for people that are not paying attention to the fact that this has a label for spoilers. But on that note, we're going to say goodnight. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for all of your likes, comments, and subscriptions. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Have a great night. We'll see you guys.